Well, hi, I'm Dr. Henry Robertson. I'm here to talk to you about your home that's on the Garden District Neighborhood Foundation Tour of Homes. It's a delight to be with you this evening.
Thanks. We're Tom and Dawn Spencer. We're at 2017 Albert Street, and we've been here 3 years. A little over 3 years, yeah.
Your home has a very interesting history connected to one of the biggest names in all of Americana, and that's Sears.
Right.
Could you explain a little bit about that?
Our home, our best information that we have, was built in 1918, and back then Sears had a catalog that you could pick out floor plans for our house, and this was a Sears Craftsman's Cottage, and it was the Winona plan, best research that we can come up with, and it's had a lot of alterations, which was common. They would get the plans fairly cheap, build the whole house probably for around $400, and then they would kind of make little different, changes here and there on the floor plan to kind of suit it to the owner's wishes or needs.
Yeah, that's one of the most fascinating things, how you could pick up a catalog and order a house, and it would arrive in 30,000 pieces on the railroad, and then you would put it together the way that you wanted it.
Exactly.
And you're right, they started marketing them with different names. This one's the Winona, and it has plans, and some of them you could just pay cash for, or Sears would offer a mortgage with it. And so between the early 1900s and about the 1930s, there are literally tens of thousands of homes that shipped out, and all over America you have homes of a similar plan as this one. So do you know anything about the people who lived here?
It was it's been known as the Rosenthal House, and it was only, I think it was 3 generations of Rosenthals prior to our arrival. Mr. Rosenthal, Arnold Jack Rosenthal, was actually born in the bedroom behind me, from what I understand, from where we've researched. And he and his brother were confirmed bachelors. And after the parents were gone, they added the apartment in the back, and one stayed in the house and one lived in the apartment. And he was real active politically in local politics, and even made some had some political aspirations on a state level. And I think he achieved some of those, but really active. And then, of course, the namesake for the Rosenthal Elementary School comes from the Rosenthal name here. We actually still have a Rosenthal down the street, Mark, that lives a few blocks down on the left.
Wow, that's really fascinating. And the Rosenthals were very similar to a lot of Jewish families who came over to America and settled in the South, especially in river towns and places where you have growing economies, and they became an integral part of some of the immigrants to Louisiana, which was kind of unusual because most immigrants went to New York or Chicago, but you had the Rosenthals and others, and then for generations were important in the politics and education of the society. I think, Tom, you told me there were some stories about the Rosenthal brothers here. What are those stories like?
They had some, I learned the stories kind of secondhand through the neighbors that we've met. Our neighbors next door, the Drells, have been there for 40 years, and so they kind of give me hints of information here and there when we talk, but just that they were very colorful people, and they would speed up and down the driveway in their Cadillacs, and evidently one of them was a huge collector of movies, and he had a massive movie collection, probably over 10,000 titles back in the apartment back in the day.
Wow.
We have
stacked floor to
just
ceiling.
stacked floor to ceiling movies, but he was a big fan of that. And I guess from the neighbor next door on the other side, he indicated that in the later years they could be the final Mr. Rosenthal that was here, Arnold Jack, could sometimes maybe be a little abrasive and stuff, and kind of started staying to himself a little more, which is understandable. I'll probably do the same thing.
That's wonderful. Well, Dawn, tell me what you love about this house.
I've always loved old homes, and I love just the architecture, the flooring, the windows, everything. And as far as just the neighborhood goes, love being here, love our neighbors. We just have some of the best neighbors that have become a really, really good friends here.
Really good friends. We
Yeah.
even, in fact, travel with them, and it's not just a specific group. Everyone has a really kind of an open door policy. We bounce from front porch to front porch in the nice weather, just visiting and walking the neighborhoods and we look out for each other, you know, and they look out for us. So it's a real, you know, neighborhood feel.
That's really amazing because we're talking about going on almost 100 years now that this house has been here. And I noticed when we walked around that there are a lot of different changes and renovations that have gone on. And that's one of the most amazing things about owning a home. What were some of the changes that you noticed and that y'all have done to this house?
I have to give credit where it's due. Mark Garvell did the restoration project through the historic preservation tax credit, which is a wonderful thing. And he just had great vision. And we were actually at a historic tour of homes on White Street, and I've known Mark for years, and he had done a house, and it kind of sparked our interest. We were living over on Marie Street, but closer to post-war development stuff, and I called Mark and asked if he had anything new coming available. Some of the biggest changes were obviously the kitchen. It's more of a modern kitchen now, and it's a working kitchen, and we cook a lot. I cook a lot.
You cook a lot.
Yeah, I love to cook, and it works well for us. We have 5 daughters. It's a big open floor plan kitchen, so and you know, besides the daughters, we like company. We have lots of company.
Well, one of the most interesting things I found out was in one of the censuses early, like in 1930, this house was listed as having a radio set, and that would have meant that, you know, it was one of the more wealthy places in the neighborhood. Yeah, high tech for that era. And so, you know, you love to entertain. They probably entertained with the radio because, you know, neighbors would come over to listen, and the kids from the neighborhood would come listen to the kids' programs, and it was probably a center of attention. You can imagine them, you know, on these hardwood floors there, intently, you know, listening to these radio programs in the 1930s, which would have been unusual for you know, neighborhoods. There was not that many homes that had radio sets in 1930, so I thought that was kind of fascinating.
That's
Very
interesting.
fascinating.
Census listed that. Also listed at one point, this house was worth $12,000, which I
Wow.
thought was really interesting as well.
What a bargain.
You know, because well, you bought it for $400. It was $12,000 by, you know, a couple of a decade or two later. You
Never
can
know.
appreciate it greatly.
$400 goes a long way.
Yeah, it goes a long way back in 1918. Yeah, and of course the house would have been built as America was in World War I, and a lot of the lumber mills would have, you know, stopped production for civilian and started producing for the war effort. But it did not last very long time. You know, this house was built, and then we ended World War I, you know, in that November of 1918. And afterward, Alexandria continued to grow. The lumber mills still produced, the railroads. You had a real river town here. And so you can imagine that the homes were being built out from this location. I think one of the great features out here is, of course, the bricks on the street. That's just one of the most fascinating things. And that would have come after, you know, dirt and then gravel, and then they would have gone to brick, and it's just stayed that way.
It stayed, and we love the brick.
Yeah.
We hope it stays.
It's not, you know, the best driving, and sometimes it gets potholes and stuff. The city does a pretty decent job of, you know, maintaining it. But yeah, the bricks is part of the deal that sold us. We're big fans of New Orleans.
Yeah.
And we go often, and it kind of gives us a New Orleans feel right here in Alexandria.
Well, what's your favorite season to be here in this house? Fall, winter, spring, summer? What's your favorite season?
I think winter.
Winter, Christmas time.
Christmas.
Actually. It's our favorite.
This is a really fun house to decorate for Christmas.
It is.
It is.
Dawn does a really good
With
job.
all of the windows, we keep them open a lot of the time. And you can see all the decorations from the street that we have inside, and we have the big front porch that we do a lot of decorations on. And so I would say fall and winter. Of course, those are my favorite seasons anyway.
Yeah, so you're right in the middle of it. This is, you know,
And
that's-
either of the porch seasons, you know, if it's the fall or the spring, where we can start getting outside
True.
and enjoying it.
Right.
Summertime, it gets a little too hot sometimes, and winter sometimes too cold.
We have several races that come down the street
Yeah.
too.
But
So that's fun to sit on the porch and
Susan
watch
Komen
those.
race comes down, and we usually set up a sound system in the front and play music for them and heckle the runners. And then we're real involved with the foundation as well. We host the Mardi Gras party every year, right here on the street, on the corner.
I've been to it once,
It's a really fun time. It keeps growing every year. It's a food drive for the Mardi Gras party, and it's going up quite a bit. I think the first year we collected maybe a couple £100. Next year we We did 600 pounds, and I think this past year we got almost to 1,000 pounds of food that goes straight to the Central Louisiana Food Bank.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
It's neighbors pouring back into the community.
That's right,
too, so.
helping each other.
Yeah.
That's right. I've done some research, and there's still a lot to be done because I have a discrepancy between the census and a city directory.
Okay.
There's a city directory that says this house was vacant in 1940. All right, I have a census that says either here at 2017 or at 2217, depending on how you interpret the handwriting.
Okay.
Remember, the census taker actually walked around and hand wrote the census. And on the census, it says that an African American woman lived
Okay.
at either 2017 or 2217. Her name was Robinson. She was listed as a school teacher.
Okay.
She also had a boarder named Sophie Williams who lived here with her, and she was a maid. This might not have been all that unusual because the Rosenthals were involved in education. They were a Jewish family that were typically more sympathetic with African Americans. And even though many neighborhoods were white and black, that's how the South was, sometimes you had people who lived in these neighborhoods that were connected to families or who were of mixed families, and they would get to live in an area of the city that normally was not the case. So this is one of those mysteries that needs to be
I had
investigated
not heard
more.
that story.
But they only lived here maybe a short time because it may have been when one generation of Rosenthals was getting ready to transfer to another.
Yeah.
Because there really is that unbroken strand of them. But the census says that there were these two women living here, and that would have been on the day that the census taker arrived. That's the only thing that we know. They may not have been here very long at all, and they were renters. And so it's kind of interesting to find that. But like with all home mysteries, it's probably deeper and more to find. That you'll have to kind of wait and see. With, like I said, the interpretation of the numbers that the census taker wrote, and then discrepancies. But it's kind of fascinating that you may have had African American women living here in 1940.
Absolutely.
It's kind of an interesting part of the history, and you can imagine that Rosenthal was really interested in education, black and white education, and so it might have been that I have a place free, you can live here for a time. But we hope to find more for the tour because it would be interesting to know this history because there are many different tidbits that really enrich what we know about this neighborhood and the homes that are here.
So we'd invite anybody to come out, come see our neighborhood, come see our neighbors, and come visit us. It's December 16th here in the Garden District. There's 5 homes on the tour. It'll be from 4 to 8 p.m. Or 4 to 7 for your ticket sales and stuff. The trolley will be running, and